We will be done by 7:30, so we'll get this all in. So today, we are looking at curriculum as a whole, and also the building principles, same design that we actually had for last year as well. So we're going to hear from Kelly Morgan LaRosa first, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Then we will hear from Jeff, then Mark, then Lauren. So without further ado, why don't I turn it over to Kelly?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Lauren passed out our packet, our presentation packet, so you should all have that in front of you. And if you turn to the first page, this is just a diagram to illustrate the New York State metrics and expectations from state ed, which is kind of what we base our planning around, everything that we do in curriculum and in all the buildings. So the center represents our end goal of all students graduating college and career ready. And the three outer circles represent what we're always working on, which is the state standards, data-driven instruction, and teacher-leader effectiveness. And we know that those three pillars support students being ready for college and career and graduating on time. So along with the district goals, this is kind of what we use for our framework and thinking and our planning about what we're going to do programmatically and in materials. And I just wanted to point out, I know there's been some things in the news about state ed, retooling, reconsidering. Commissioner Elia has made it clear that even though the standards are under review, they are not backing away from high standards for all students. So we're just continuing on getting through the changes that are going on. So to talk about just those three outer circles, the Common Core state standards form the foundation of our materials and resources. So everything we look at, we have to consider, is it meeting the demands and rigor of what's expected in the standards? As far as teacher leader effectiveness, we want to make sure that the training that we provide are preparing our teachers so that they can meet the demands and help the children with what they need to work on. And also, are we providing teachers time and frameworks to look at our data and adjust their materials, adjust their instructions to, again, support the students. So that's just kind of a framework about what we think about along the way in our planning. And then to look specifically at the next page, our initiatives for 16-17. And looking at our CDEP data and our meetings with teacher groups and our data from local assessments and state assessments, we really need to look at a reading and writing assessment system in-house that provides us the ability to match reading materials to student reading abilities. Research shows that in order for students to keep improving in their reading, they need about 50 minutes of independent reading a day at their independent reading level. So we have to make sure we're accurately assessing that and giving them the materials during the school day to work on that. Another initiative we're continuing on this year, we heard a little bit about last year, is the New York State Social Studies Framework, which is really calling for the inquiry model, which is investigations in social studies. So it's no longer just fact memorization. Textbooks just form the foundation. We need research material and more reading material, authentic documents, so students K through 12 can do research and answer inquiry questions. Another initiative coming soon, we've been hearing about, are the next generation science standards. State is about to approve those. That again is a shift in our instructional model where it's just not teacher driven fact memorization, it's hands-on research, students forming questions, and then going out and being able to support what they're finding. And another initiative we want to work on is, I know we've heard a lot about STEAM and maker spaces and providing those opportunities for students to be creative and more technologically advanced, integrated throughout every curriculum. So those are the main areas that we are going to focus on the upcoming year. The other areas that we continue to work on are our professional development to support everything I just talked about, and we do that in a variety of ways. So our teachers, if they are department chairs or teacher leaders at the various grade levels, they go to forums which are offered from BOCES. So there's an ELA forum, a social studies forum, a science forum, a elementary math forum. That's where teachers go and hear about the initiatives from state ed, work with other school districts, and collaborate and find out what they can bring back to our district. They also attend communities of practice in the areas of ELA and math, which helps strengthen their instructional strategies. And then we bring in specific content area trainings on our staff development days. So those are our initiatives coming up for the 16-17 school year.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
As I'm looking at your budget, which is, in line with your initiatives, one of the biggest changes I've seen are under classroom supplies. There's an increase in that line. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
That increase is for two reasons. So the main reason is the first initiative that I have on my checklist there, which is around the reading and writing assessment system. So it's providing the tools for the teachers to perform that assessment system, and then having the reading materials that match those levels for the classroom teacher to have in the classroom.
Okay.
Beyond that, it would be providing a makerspace or initiatives, whether it's robots like we saw Sue Schnoffer come, and she just started to work on those, so it's expanding those offerings throughout the curriculum.
Okay. I just noticed
Yep.
that was the biggest change that just jumped out at me.
Those are big changes happening in those areas, so.
And it's also good at the elementary levels as intervention or prevention too, if you consider it before we get up into kids being identified as really not being successful.
Correct.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Is there a name for the reading and writing assessment system?
We have not selected one yet. We are still investigating them. IRLA is the big one, which is Independent Reading Level Assessment System, but that final decision has not been made. And around the writing, Lucy Calkins has a writing framework that lets teacher analyze student writing and make sure it's aligned to the state standards.
So are you, like you said, 15 minutes each classroom day they should be reading? Well, that's a lot of if it's 40 minutes for your class.
The research actually shows students need to read 50 minutes independently.
okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the recommendation from state ed and from the research is you want to have 30 minutes in school, 30 minutes outside of school of independent reading. So during that independent reading time, teachers then would be conferencing with other students and working on their skills during that 30-minute independent reading time. It used to be called guided reading, which would still continue in the younger grades. The state ed calls it GRARE, which is guided reading and independent reading.
So that would only be 10 minutes of actual instruction from the teacher in the class?
It would be diagnostic instruction, so no, you wouldn't take the place of your whole group instruction around the standards. It's allotting time in the day to make sure the students are reading at their diagnosed independent reading level.
And elementary instruction is anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes of reading a day.
Okay.
Right, the high school's to 41
Yeah,
minutes.
this would just, and I apologize, I should have noted that. This would just be K through 5.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In my mind, it was obvious, but no, on
Yeah,
paper, it's
yeah.
not, no.
Okay.
Not at the high. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Other questions for Kelly before we move on? And before we move on, the reason actually that we did this in this format last year and again this year is curriculum and instruction really guides all of the buildings. And so whereas we have every department present, it didn't make sense to have Kelly present with Lucinda or Kelly with Dave. I mean, it makes sense since it's guiding everything that all three of the buildings are doing to have the overview first and then each of the building initiatives. So hopefully if this works for everyone, we'll continue this model because I think it dovetails very nicely in with each other.
Well, and if I could just do a segue as well, on the board memorandum tonight, you'll see two motions for the board to make recommendations for hire for 2 reading teachers. And so the segue to Kathy Klopp's question is, we're partially a reading program right now, especially with 2 retirements, and so we're hoping that the new hires will help to make some good decisions moving forward on a reading program as well. I got distracted because one of them just walked in the door.
Okay, Mr. Cervoni, you are up.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm pretty proud to come here and present what I think is a fiscally responsible budget for the junior, senior high school.
And that is on page 2,
Page 2.
so everyone knows.
We started a zero-based budget, and we work with our department chairs in creating budgets for departments, so there's a lot of work that goes into just working collaboratively with all the departments in creating a fiscally responsible budget every year. So when I bring this to you, I think we did a really good job. Myself and all the department chairs, and I work with Kelly at the junior, senior high school. If you look at your slide, I've highlighted some budget highlights, and I've highlighted some academic highlights on the left. As always, the junior, senior high works with Kelly and the district to support our board goals of increased rigor for our students and the adoption of the Common Core standards. In doing that, we've been able to add AP courses, which we're very proud of, AP Statistics and Psychology. We've added some sections of AP, which allows a lot of our students opportunities to take higher level courses. And one of the ideas that we've been tossing around is the idea of a freshman academy for next year. Focused all on our ninth graders, incoming ninth graders, 20-week course that meets every other day for the year.
You talking to the mic?
Yeah, sorry. So those are some of our junior, senior high initiatives around budgeting. If you look at the budget, our focus is on the STEAM initiative, science, technology, engineering, arts or agriculture, and math. Some of our science team has expressed some interest in some high-tech. One of the machines they've been begging me to get them is an electrophoresis machine that has to do with RNA and DNA. Art is really just a resupply. Those types of classes just burn through materials when they have their creative crafts and paint brushes and paints and different tools with all the students that go through there. Things just happen, things get used up. Our music department, pretty standard stuff. We continue to have to tune those, that equipment, those instruments. We always need repairs, and they always need to be cleaned on a yearly basis. So that's always a focus of that budget. We had quite a big spike in our NHS membership this year.
And again,
I
not
don't know
to
why
assume- National Honor Society, not
National
to
Honor
assume it.
Society, which we need to be affiliated with, so it's kind of whatever they wanted to charge us, we would pay them. But I think
Oh,
it
the
went-
cost to belong to the national?
the cost to belong to it, I think it jumped from $89 to $350.
Crazy.
It was an incredible spike. And that's something that we do budget for every year. So that was something that kind of took us, came in from left field. Technology is a pretty exciting program. Steve Jones has the plasma cutter and the CNC router. But what we see when we have these really high-tech systems is that we are using more materials, more consumables. So that's, a big piece of that budget through tech is that they continue to have to buy that stuff so all of our students can use that new equipment. Social studies was sort of interesting this year. Robert Pierce, who's the department chair, had submitted his budget, and it was up an exorbitant amount. And usually we have sort of in our heads when we do budgeting, we sort of have a certain increase or where we think departments should be, and his was pretty high. And I said, Robert, what is going on in social studies? And he said, Jeff, we have been really pinching pennies for years. He said, I need to buy maps, hanging maps, to support geography. And geography is such a big part of all social studies curriculum, even though we don't always hear that term geography in the name of the courses. But the global studies in geography in 10th grade and 9th grade, it's just a big component in the curriculum. So I thought it was a really good request and a well thought out plan. So I think he's buying 8 hanging maps that show different time periods through history that he's going to distribute within his department.
And I want to jump in here for a minute just about the budget process as a whole, because Jeff touched on it, so it's a good time to talk about it again. So with each of the administrators looking at their budgets, and Jeff, I think, is a really good example of this. So they look at their department chairs or when they're all putting their budgets together, and they're all told, we're going to start with the zero-based budgeting. And basically what that means is we're not just rolling over last year's budgets, assuming everything's going to stay the same, because it really shouldn't stay the same, needs change every year. And in the ideal world, what would that look like for the coming year? And they do that. We've asked them to do that. But again, in an ideal world, sometimes what you're asking for is going to be more than what we're going to be able to provide. And we know that right from the get-go, because they're all doing it in their own independent little silos at first. And in Jeff's case, when he looks at the junior-senior budget, he sees the whole picture. They're not seeing all that, and he can tell right away, oh, we've got some big spikes in some areas, and some which aren't covered by decreases in others. So we sit down, we talk about it, and I will sing your praises here just for a second. Jeff, and this is what, your third budget now that you're actually doing this, has come to know his budget so much better that we've actually got into a comfortable groove. He knows I'm going to be coming back and saying, Jeff, we've got some issues going on here. What are we going to be looking at? And so he already knows going into it that, okay, I need to know my every line, which he does, and then to go back, because ultimately, even with the department chairs, it is a principal's budget in their schools. So he has the ability to work with each of the department chairs and say, here's what we need, here's what we don't need.
Well, it's so funny, when I saw the spike in the social studies, I ran to Tom's office, and he had been in a meeting, and I was like feverishly looking for him, and I said, Tom, how am I going to sit at the BAT meeting and explain a spike in the social studies? And social studies really went from like $186 budget for 17, a lot of teachers in the department, to maybe $800. Really, in the big picture, it wasn't a lot more money, but comparatively speaking, it was a big percentage. And I said, Tom, you've got to help me out at the BAT meeting if people come in. And he said, Jeff, that's justified.
Are these maps not in the book?
There are maps in the book.
Are there no maps on the walls now?
There are maps on the walls.
So they haven't changed. The maps aren't changing.
They're outdated.
Well, yeah, they are. I mean, you ever look at Africa lately? I mean, the names change to those countries almost on a yearly process, and no
Yeah.
one gets at it. So, I mean, they do have a tendency to change.
And when you study Global One, and you study Africa in 1600, you know, like, it's the time periods, too, where things have changed. You know, modern-day Turkey was, you know, Constantinople, right. And so
For the
that,
most part, our books are brand new because of Common Core. So we have brand new textbooks, so those, I'm not saying I don't want the maps, I'm just saying that
Yep.
we have this somewhere if we don't get the maps.
well, it was interesting, because I observed a social studies class today, Global One, and he had a map in his class, and he had the students do this activity where, with Post-it notes, they were in groups, they talked about different geographical areas, went up, labeled it, came back, and then when they came around to say, okay, what's G? Oh, it's the Sahara, you know, and they went through and they had this discussion about the geography of Africa, and then different tribal movements through Africa. It was really a neat lesson I watched today. I mean, he had a big map, and he had commented, he goes, I just had borrowed this map from another teacher and put it in to do this lesson on Africa, and how it's changed over time, and how civilizations have moved, and they typically move toward water and obviously areas where you can farm. But it was really a cool lesson to see this big map hanging and students interacting and going up and putting Post-its and coming back and having this discussion in the
Well,
classroom.
I think there's been a lot of change in the way that we teach
Right.
social studies or history over the past years. When I was in school, we taught it regionally. So I could tell you anything about Africa, but I couldn't tell you what was happening in Europe at the same time. And that's what we're trying to get away from.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
But I can also say, and Patty, you bring up actually a good point, that will this money necessarily go to MAPS? This is the blueprint now. At some point, we're going to add everything in, and we're going to see what our deficit is. And I will absolutely guarantee at some point, and every one of them can confirm this, I'm going to come back and say, hey, our $27 million budget is at $28.5 million, we can't do this, we need to cut back somewhere. They then go back to the department chairs and say, where can you cut? They're building what they think they need to best serve their classroom, and at some point, we're going to come back and say, everyone needs to give a little. So what you're seeing here may not end up being the final cut. So it's a good point to actually bring up on that. So, sorry, Jeff.
And I think another point too, and it might have been made earlier and I missed it, is that Eden is one of the districts that has gone through multiple years of not spending. And so you're starting to see people say, okay, I've done this for a number of years, but I can't do it for much longer. I need to start having some conversation about moving forward. And there is a general upswing in the economy in some conversations, and people are feeling that and saying, we can't keep standing still.
In number 8 there on my slide, the business department, Joanne Ramekers is the department chair there, and one of her, and she works a lot with Kelly and I throughout the year because she's big with the STEAM initiative in the district. She continues to want to increase our robot, the number of robots we have in the department. We participate in the Hour of Code. We have Sue Schnaufer in the lower grades working with our students. So she's budgeting for things like Finch robots that are really on the outside look like a basic robot, but you can use JavaScript to program them. It's really cutting edge technology. We have B-bots for our younger kids. Mrs. Carter probably knows about those because they're really the K to, in her primary building. We use Lego Mindstorms, I think, in your building, Mark. So Joanne, who thinks globally through the district, is how do we buy enough robots, Jeff, to share these with really anybody who's interested in getting into a robotic activity and learning some coding. And we're starting that more and more and through the budget process of purchasing more robots to share K through 12. And it's been an exciting initiative that we've been doing for the last couple of years.
Jeff, you make such a good point, because we're at a perfect place with Eden's current enrollment to look at things K-12, and not this is just the high school and this is just the elementary, and to see how our students in different buildings can work together and how our equipment can be shared between buildings, because we're just not big enough of a district to do it separately anymore. And so I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and our departments typically are great with that train of thought. Math department is pretty standard stuff. They seem to always order calculators. We always want to make sure our students have that TI-84 that they use pretty much in all the high school math courses.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of conversation about that last year.
And we've had a lot of conversation. And it's not that we're in the business of giving every student a calculator, but we certainly want to have them available during testing if needed, during Regents exams.
Well, and we're required to.
And we're required to. Most students are asked to bring them, but like any student, some can't afford them, some lose them, some break them. So Laura Feasley, who's the department chair of math, is real proactive in making sure we have more than enough calculators and batteries to take care of our students, which I think is a great way of doing business in the math department. So we've got another order of calculators going out, and those things are not cheap. They're expensive. Physical education is standard wearable items. We have a lot of kids that go through our phys ed department, and things just wear out. Balls, pool equipment, sticks. And with roughly 700 students going through there, Colleen is always begging me to just keep resupplying. Things just wear out.
She just
She just walked in?
Yep.
It's Colleen's fault.
Just talking about Mrs. Scott. So those were my budget highlights. We talked about AP courses. One thing I would hate to not mention before my time is up is that we did run a really neat elective course in the social studies department called the History of Eden this year. It's a 20-week course. It's just winding down. Jamie Utley taught it. It was a smaller class.
How many kids?
I think there were 5 kids total. And I know sometimes we talk about size and what should we run, and I will tell you, in talking to Mr. Utley and interviewing the students, they all said, please, don't ever put more than 10 in here, because it was such a college-style, higher-level course where they had these, round table talks, almost like we are here, like you would take at a college course. They did a lot of research in the community. Every student had, I think, 3 locations to go to in Eden, research it. There's currently a website that they're building, and they're going to actually present to the Board of Ed very soon and just show you some of the neat things about Eden and some of the history of Eden that they were able to research and put together in a web page. Some of the things, they did the kazoo factory, they did the railroad depot, they did the Schweikart house. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, who lives in Eden. It was a brewery at one time, historically. Mike, if you know about that.
Is it on Hart Road?
I don't know where it is, but looked at a couple churches, looked at Four Corners, looked up in East Eden at some of the history of East Eden, looked at early settlers here, Quakers. I mean, it's really neat what they dove into with this small, sort of intimate class setting. The kids absolutely raved about it. They loved the content, the curriculum, and they loved working with Mr. Utley. So I just want to share that with you, and I look forward to that board presentation when Jamie comes down and does it with the kids. They're pumped to come down here and show you all the neat things they found in Eden.
All right, questions for Jeff?
Actually, I just have one for Kelly. It really isn't a budget question. Is our business partnership with Siemens for the STEAM initiative still active?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Have you had another contact with them at all?
No, Bob Grant, I believe, is no longer with
Right,
them, and
exactly.
I'm waiting for that contact
All right.
information.
I'll do a little pushing for you. and
That'd
see
be
if I can
great.
help you out.
That's what got us over to Pioneer, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Jeff, with the freshman academy, do you need more staffing though to run that?
Right now, Mike, in the initial plannings of the schedule for next year, I don't believe we will need additional staffing. And I will tell you that we're working really hard to figure out how that fits. in
We're
our
trying to do a
schedule.
budget neutral and look at how we could do that budget neutral.
Yeah, we're looking at making that a budget neutral, and we think it's going to be great for our freshman class.
And when
So-
are we gonna, when do you present staffing?
We get in staffing pretty much around March.
Okay. Then when you come, I mean, I think the history of Eden thing's great, but 5 kids seems really low.
It's a first year.
Okay. Could we have maybe something from the guidance department that shows how many classes we're running this year with less than 10 to 12 kids?
Yes?
I hope this is an appropriate time for the comment. At our department chair meetings, we're having pretty intense conversations around if we can weather what's going to happen between now and your middle school concept, if we can keep current staff in the house that are good teachers until we see how that shuffles out, in order to give a level playing field to all of the different departments, when you start to do that, you limit the choices for students who may be a talented person who, in fashion and design, if you run a fashion design course and it's less than 10, it may really be worth it to those 10 kids. Is when we have 78 kindergarten students, you get to the high school level, you're going to see smaller classes. And without that, we can't give the kid the opportunity to get a terrific transcript to leave our high school with. So I know we want to right size, and I know we're growing some programs, and sometimes that's at the expense of other programs, but hopefully those days are over. If a kid's talented in art, and you're in a class with 6 kids, and you got 6 talented artists, when you had an incoming class of 78 kindergartners, that's what we're all about.
There's a lot that we have to take a look at in the next 5 to 10 years of where we're going, because what's going to start to happen for us in the immediate future that Kathy is starting to talk about is how do we bring in a 6, 7, 8, knowing that we're sharing a building and sharing teachers, which causes restrictions. So we have to really make sure that we don't do reductions that we can't add on when we need them a year or two from now because of a 2% tax cap. In addition to that, the high school staff has done a really great job of looking at the courses that we offer and what the kids want to take. And so many courses that we were offering before are still there. Some of them aren't there. Just because they weren't offered one year doesn't mean that they're not going to be offered another year. So they come and they go. But it's much more student-oriented, and I'm really thrilled about that. Conversations about having something that runs every other year or perhaps every other day instead of a 20-week course. The history of Eden is word of mouth. I mean, kids don't jump into things that they don't know. And so if we can get it running and get kids talking about it and talking to each other, next year it might grow. Or it might have been placed in the wrong spot. We don't know because it's brand new. What I would also say is if Eden schools want to bring students into Eden, we have to make sure that we don't blow away our AP courses, our upper level courses, where they might be small, because otherwise no one will come. So we've got an awful lot to talk about in the next 5 years about what we're going to offer and what we're not.
And to jump in, speaking of an awful lot to talk about, we've got about 20 more minutes and 2 more people, so I just want to keep it going. This is not the end of the questions, so
Might be advantageous,
I'm hoping the philosophy is changing, that courses run even if there's less than 10. If the course is something a kid needs for a sequence or their transcript to get them into college. Music theory would be one of those.
Well, sometimes there's a different way to offer the course too, Kathy. So we have to be creative on the way we look at things.
okay. Mr. Graff.
God is life simpler at the elementary. Make sure that's in the record. So
We're on page 3 of 4 here at this point.
So just piggybacking a lot really on what Kelly talked about earlier. Eden Elementary continues to be a great place where kids are working hard and performing extremely well. I know we don't like to put a lot of stock in numbers and things like that, but I can tell you last year, I can tell you last year the building growth score that we received was outstanding, and that's a testament to the staff and the kids working hard every day. So I want to make sure we acknowledge that. So we will continue to support Board of Education Goals 1 and 2, which is the academic rigor, and continuing to implement the Common Core standards. Our supply purchases will be for the materials that support those things. We are really making an effort, and Kelly's been a driving force behind this, increasing our supplemental reading materials, especially around the science and the social studies. Those standards right now, we don't have a lot of things in-house, so we're trying to beef that up. You'll see, if you look at the actual budget, the increase that you see in 4th and 6th grade, that revolves around building those materials up for those grade levels. Again, making purchases that support our data-driven instruction program, and that goes back to the reading program that Kelly talked about earlier. We are in the early stages of building up a reading book room where teachers will be able to go in and out and grab materials that are appropriate for each individual student in their classroom. That is in the infancy stages. Kelly's working hard with our reading staff to make that happen. So that will continue as we move forward. The other thing that, people that have been around this table have heard me talk about AIS and now response to intervention programs for years, just to try to get that to the level that our kids need to support everybody and get them what they need. We do a great job with what we have. I know right now we're in the process of looking for maybe some apps that we can use on our iPads and things like that would even support that more. So that will remain in the forefront. So the budget overview for 16-17, it's about a 4.5% increase over last year, but I'm looking at Tom's updated version, and I'm actually down a little.
Yeah,
Because
that's what I was looking at. You're
your
actually
equipment's
down
going
about
down, so that's
$1,000.
why.
So-
Yeah, if you look at supplies, they're up, the equipment's down.
The music repairs, like Jeff said earlier, we try to do a great job on keeping our current inventory of instruments up to date, safe, clean, repair them as they needed, because you don't even want to see the cost of a French horn. It's like, I don't know, 10 grand. It's crazy. So the investment we make on this side of it really pays off down the road. Conference expenses, you will see a big jump in that, and I think Sandy was going to talk about this maybe a little bit. She has talked me into entering the superintendent development program for the upcoming year. I actually start Friday, and there are some expenses conference-wise that go with that, and Sandy said,
So
make sure
Mark
you
will
include
accompany me
those.
to the superintendent conference next year, most likely in Albany, but maybe not, sometimes in Saratoga. It is a program that districts, when they find people that they can grow from the inside, try to do. It's not good for a district to have a superintendent, a principal, a teacher do the same thing for 30 years. This is not good for anybody. Everybody needs to grow and move forward. We knew when Mark moved from the high school to the elementary school that wasn't a permanent position.
Right.
And that this is a good time for him to help us create the middle school model. Perhaps Mark will still be around to begin that middle school of a 6, 7, 8, and perhaps he won't. And so this is a program that I am indebted to get me to sit where I am, and I believe that it's important for us to do a pay it forward, just as other school districts do, because to have neighboring school districts, as we know, with poor superintendents, doesn't make us look any better, and we've all been a part of that. And so I'm thrilled to be able to present that for Mark for next year.
And from the financial side, what I would say is, so what Mark's put in his budget is that conference part of it. The cost for the program is under Sandy's budget, so she'll talk about that when she does her budget part of it.
Okay.
So we carpool, just so you know.
We'll carpool, right. I keep asking her if she's just trying to push me out the door. She assures me she is not. So,
Not too fast.
so I don't know if there's any general questions that you have. We're pretty much solid across the board from where we were last year. I can tell you in the library area, you'll see that we did make some adjustments there. We increased our book money, but you see that the video portion, we've taken that down to 0. I talked to Mrs. Plotz about that, and she said there's really no need for it because everything's online now.
Sure.
So we're really not buying videos and things like that. So she wanted some of that money pushed up into the book line. And the same thing with periodicals. We brought that down a little bit, almost cut it in half for the same purpose. I mean, you can get pretty much all those materials online for free now. So we're maintaining just a very small periodical collection. So I don't know if there's anything else. General questions?
Okay, then Mrs. Carter, you are up.
Okay. I'm on the last page of the packet. I know, do you see Mrs. Cuddy there?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack, for the chairs.
Okay. So our focus is very similar to the people who presented before me. My teachers at the GLP have heard a lot of us having conversations about transformational teaching and technology to increase academic rigor and implement the Common Core learning standards. So we've had a lot of conversation at the GLP about this model of transformational teaching and using technology to get there while we're increasing the rigor. So we had the fortunate opportunity to visit a school district earlier in the fall. It was actually Lockport City School District, which is a really interesting school district. They have a very, very high poverty rate and they did some amazing things. So when you walk through the building, not only are they embedded in technology all over the place, in every classroom, but it really has to do with the transformational teaching that they're doing. And we are sending a team of teachers from GLP there to visit that school on our next staff development day. And really, it's not about the premise that they're not doing amazing things. They are. They are doing truly amazing things with what they have.
Here.
And it kind of goes with the fact that it has to do with the tools they've been given and the mentality that how long have we gone without what we don't have. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about this transformational teaching and vision we have with a one-to-one initiative and things we're working towards. So a lot of our budget has to do with how do we get there and how do we give them the tools to have this true transformational vision for the building. So under that transformational vision, we are going to continue to support the Common Core Learning Standards, and we do use the modules to do that. So most of the materials we have are provided for us. But if the teachers need to do any kind of supplementing with that, we do provide the materials for them. We also want to make sure that we have the appropriate materials to enhance our programs for rigor along to the Common Core and the New York State Science and Social Studies standards that Kelly spoke to when she did her presentation. Both those standards are in the process of, the Social Studies is already a changed framework, and the science is in the process of changing. So I can tell you at the GLP level, those two content areas have not been truly an area where we have gobs and gobs of resources. So we continue to try to focus our resources in that area so that we are supporting that curriculum. We mostly right now do it through the area of reading. So we make sure we have guided reading materials to support that, and we continue to build that in our reading room so the teachers have resources, but we're looking for some additional materials. So I'm going to talk about things like hands-on materials for our science kits. The elementary uses science kits to teach their science. We do not. Those were cut from the budget. I can tell you well before I came 13 years ago, they were not in the budget. So we struggle sometimes in teaching those two content areas, and we really are trying to focus some materials in that so that we really can be on the cusp of those new standards. We are going to continue with a focus on individualized reading materials to support our students, and we do that a lot through our guided reading instruction, but also supporting those content areas. So you heard me speak when I talked to Mrs. Kraus about the 90 minutes to 120 minutes. Our students are spending that every single day in the area of ELA, but many times through their ELA lessons, they're being also integrating that science and social studies. So we really need rich literacy to enable to do that. And then we're working on our continued vision to have materials that continue to support our programs. For those of you who are familiar with GLP, that increase family and school partnerships in education. We offer probably a monthly program where we bring our families in to participate in curricular activities that really help them have that partnership with home and school. So we have our family reading night, we have our family math game night, and as much as those are a small nominal cost to us, they do require us to do some things that we need materials for, and we have a great turnout. The numbers continue to rise. I would say for last year's math game night, we probably had, out of 340 some students, we probably had 200, and
It was the biggest one ever.
we had probably about 280 to 300 people represented there. So it was huge, and so we continue to try and bring those numbers up, and it really is a great way to bring our families involved in school, part of the curriculum, and then they really hopefully continue that at home. So we really see a benefit to that. We did a new literacy night for grade 1 this year, so grade 1 parents could help their children at home with literacy, and we had a huge turnout. I would say about 80% of the grade level showed up for that evening, and we provided a lot of resources for parents and students that way. So our budget supports what GLP has been building on this current year. Our first goal is to purchase additional smart boards for the instructional program, which is absolutely crucial. I can't, again, thank the board enough for that support they gave us. The smart boards have been essential in our transformational teaching. The teachers are using them 24/7. When they're in their classrooms teaching, they're teaching from their smart boards. Their students are engaged on the smart boards. They are manipulating them. They are being instructed from them. You heard me talk about Mrs. Engel, who is retiring from us this year, but she calls her smartboard Fester. It doesn't matter when I pop into her classroom, she is on Fester. Her students are on Fester. It has made a an absolute difference in our instruction at the GLP. I would like to take the next step and start to get them in our special areas. Our music teacher, our art teacher, our phys ed teachers are dying for smart boards, and you probably can't imagine what a phys ed teacher would do, but I have 2 outstanding phys ed teachers who do a great job aligning their phys ed activities to the Common Core and finding ways that kids are active and they're including literacy activities while they're teaching phys ed. So they're dying for a smart board. My pre-Ks need smart boards in their classroom. So you will see a slight increase in my equipment line because I'm trying to get some additional smart boards as quickly as possible as I can in
And
the
I would say,
GLP.
smart boards typically will be under Lucinda's budget. Lauren is do this over and above because she wants them in as quickly as possible and is trying to do anything she can to get them in there. So that's why you see them
In pre-K,
outside.
don't they offer now?
Smart table.
Yeah,
We've had
was
some
that-
conversation about the smart
That's out.
table.
Okay.
That's
Is that what you're looking for like pre-K?
That's what Mark.
So I put a bulk of money in the equipment line, and I think as Mr. Murphy said, it's about a blueprint, and it's about cost, the cost way of doing it, and, you know, if I put one in pre-K and one in an art room, and that's what I can afford, and if a smart table becomes a better option, I'm not opposed to that. The difference between a smart table is really about engagement for students and activities for students, where a smart board, they can do engaging activities on it, but then the teacher is able to also instruct from a smart board.
They're just very
What
different.
does the pre-K teachers want though? Or prefer, I should say?
She would love both, I'm quite certain of that. I am quite certain she would love both. If I told her one or the other, I'm not sure, so.
Yeah, I think we need to do a lot of research on it.
Yes.
And our problem right now is that our infrastructure doesn't support us really moving forward too fast. So what we...
GLP particularly.
At GLP
Because what I would say,
particularly.
if I'm doing
Yeah.
a smart board, let's say at the pre-K level, it would have to be a mobile one.
That's right.
Because pre-K is going to be moving.
That's right.
So I always have to think about that for the fact of what's going on in the next couple of years with the capital project. I have to be real cautious.
What we do know is that part of the reason why the capital project passed and why the board maintained GLP being open is because we honestly believe that GLP is what is going to bring people into Eden, and that transformation can happen at the primary level. And so technology is going to swing it and allow us to get into places from a transformational perspective that we've not been able to get to before. But Lauren's exactly right. We still have a limitation until our infrastructure changes. And it's like that last chapter of a book. I don't know if we're going to be able to wait that long until it gets in there, because our teachers are pumped and they're excited and they're ready to move.
So I'm trying to stay ahead of it
Yeah.
little by little.
And with a
Another-
minute and a half, anything, I'm sorry, it's. we're
I can
running out
wrap
of
this up,
time.
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Goal two, you'll see there's a slight increase with my special education supplies, and that mostly relies on the fact that I had a slight increase in my staff in special education. We added a .5 teacher. We added some different models in our special education model, so it required a little additional supplies. Goal 3 is I am really working on a one-to-one initiative in technology to have an iPad pilot at the GLP. My hope is to have 3 classrooms that have one-to-one iPads in the classroom for every student. That initiative is really requiring some research, looking at resources, working with Lucinda Karstad. So that also went into the equipment line. Right now, we are looking at some other options for technology also to be part of this transformation at GLP. And a perfect example would be this year, we were able to find some creative funding within my current budget, and we were able to get 6 of the B-bots that you heard them talk about with coding, and that the B-bots are really the beginning level for coding for primary students. So my librarian, Mr. Clancy, and my computer teacher, Ms. Sullivan, do a great job collaborating, and they do it both in the library and the computer lab, and the students start to do some beginning level programming using these B-bots. If you ever want to see them, they're the cutest thing, and they actually start to program these B-bots to do some very simplistic things. It's the very beginning level of that. So those would be the goals, I would say, at the GLP, but overall, for the budget for next year, we do have a decrease of approximately 5% over this year.
Okay, questions for Lauren? Okay, well, thank you for not having questions. It allows us to wrap up on time, so thank you.
Nice job. Thank you. Thank you.